You boys look at that rain falling out there and you think it's just weather. You think it's just water washing the dust off your trucks. But when you've been where I've been, water ain't just water. It's a monster. It's a heavy black weight that wants to fill your lungs and steal your breath. You think you know fear? Fear isn't a horror movie. Fear is the sound of 1,000,000 gallons of sludge breaking through a rock wall 3 miles from the sun. Let me tell you about the shift that changed me. Let me take you back to 1968. When I was 24, I learned that the mind gives, but the mind also takes. Settle down, young bloods. Pull up a crate. Mind that loose nail on the step. I haven't got around to fixing it yet. The knees don't work like they used to. That's the Cole's doing. You give them out in your back, and it keeps it. That's the trade. I see you staring at these hands. Yeah, the cold dust is tattooed right into the knuckles. You can scrub with lye soap until the skin peels off, but that blue-black tint that stays. It's the mark of the brotherhood. It means you went into the dark so the world above could have light. You boys talk about grinding and hustle. You work your 8 hours in the air conditioning. You got your safety goggles and your digital sensors. But let me tell you, there was a time when the only sensor we had was a canary in a cage or the flame on our helmet. If the flame turned blue, you had gas. If the flame went out, you had no oxygen. If the canary stopped singing, well, you better pray you were close to the exit. I've seen men stronger than you, broken by the silence down there. But the story I want to tell you tonight isn't about the silence. It's about the noise. It's the noise of a mountain tearing itself apart. It was November 1968. I was young, strong as an ox, and foolish enough to think I was invincible. I was back when I was 24 years old. When I was 24, I was working the graveyard shift at the Black Dog Mine, number 9 seam. It was called the Black Dog because it had a bite. It was a wet mine, low ceiling. You couldn't stand up straight from the moment you stepped into the cage until the moment you came back up. You walked like a question mark for 10 hours a day. I remember that morning clearly. Frost was heavy on the ground, crunchy like broken glass under my boots as I walked to the bathhouse. The air smelled of wood smoke and impending snow. But inside the changing room, it smelled like it always did: stale sweat, wet wool, and chewing tobacco. My partner back then was a giant of a man named Big Jim. Jim wasn't just a miner. He was part of the geology. He had hands like shovels and a laugh that could shake the dust off the rafters. He'd been down there since he was 12. He looked at me while we were lacing up our boots, those heavy steel-toed leather boots that weighed 5 pounds each. "Silas," he said to me, his voice rattling in his chest like loose gravel. "Silas, you hear the creek running high today?" I nodded. It had been raining for a week straight. The creek above the hollow was swollen, angry brown water rushing over the banks. "Water's heavy, boy," Jim said, grabbing his helmet and checking his battery pack. "Water finds a way. Keep your ears open today." I don't like the smell of the air. At 24, I just smirked. I was thinking about the girl I was courting, Sarah. I was thinking about the ring I was going to buy her with the overtime pay from this shift. I wasn't thinking about the geology, wasn't thinking about the ancient aquifers sitting right above our heads. We took the cage down. That ride never gets easy. The stomach drops into your boots, the light from the surface shrinks to a pinprick and then vanishes. Then you're in the world of the mole. The air gets thick. It tastes metallic. We were working a room and pillar section. That means we were carving out rooms of coal and leaving pillars of coal behind to hold up the roof. It's dangerous work because you're tempted to shave those pillars a little too thin to get that extra tonnage. Greed makes the roof heavy. For the first 4 hours, it was just the rhythm. Clang, hiss, crunch, the continuous minor. Machine was chewing at the face, roaring like a dragon. The dust was so thick you could chew it. We wrapped bandanas around our faces, but the black spit still came up. I was running the shuttle car, driving the coal from the face to the belt. Back and forth in the dark. The only light was the beam on my head, cutting through the swirling dust. Around 3 a.m., everything changed. It didn't happen all at once like in the movies. It started with a sound. The continuous minor machine shut down for a bit change.
Ow.
The sudden silence was deafening. And in that silence, I heard it. Now, mines are always a little wet. But this was different. I looked up at the roof bolts, those long steel rods we drill into the ceiling to pin the rock layers together. Water was weeping around the bolts. Not just weeping, it was streaming. Big Jim walked over to where I was parked. He shone his light on the wall. The coal seam was sweating. "Get the foreman," Jim whispered. I'd never heard Jim whisper before. He was a shouter. But he whispered this. "Duh. The roof is soft, Silas. It's too soft." I climbed out of the shuttle car. The ground beneath my boots felt ... spongy. Usually the floor of a mine is hard rock or slate. This felt like mud. Then we saw the rats. You ask any old-timer, they'll tell you. The rats know. We saw 3 of them, big gray things, scurrying down the haulage way, running away from the coal face. They weren't looking for food. They were running for their lives. "Everybody out," Jim yelled, his voice booming now. "Kill the power. Kill it now." The foreman, a skinny man named Miller, came running over. "What's the problem, Jim? We got quotas." "To hell with your quota." Jim grabbed Miller by the collar. "Look at the roof, it's bowing." I looked up. He was right. The stone ceiling, usually flat, was sagging in the middle like a wet mattress. The timber props we had set up were groaning. You could hear the wood fibers snapping. Pop, pop, crack. It sounds like gunshots down there. "Move," Miller screamed, finally seeing it. We started to run. There were 6 of us in that section. Me, Jim, Miller, and 3 rookies younger than me. We turned toward the main drift, the tunnel that led to the elevator. But we were 3 miles in. 3 miles of twisting, turning darkness. And then, the mountain let go. It wasn't a crash. It was a roar. Imagine a freight train coming at you. But the train is made of water and rock. The wall behind us, the one separating us from the old abandoned flooded mine next door, blew out. The pressure of millions of gallons of water smashed through the coal barrier. The wind hit us first, the air pushed by the rushing water. It knocked me flat on my face. My helmet flew off. The light went out. Absolute, total darkness. You don't know dark until you're underground without a lamp. You can't see your hand touching your nose. "Silas," I heard Jim screaming over the roar. "Grab the belt. Grab the belt line." The conveyor belt structure was bolted to the floor. I scrambled on my hands and knees, the water already hitting my ankles. It was freezing cold, smelling of sulfur and rot. This was dead water, water that had been sitting in the earth for decades, soaking up poisons. I found the metal frame of the belt and pulled myself up just as the surge hit. The water rose from my ankles to my waist in 10 seconds. It was heavy, thick with sludge and debris. Pulled at my legs, trying to drag me down into the deep machinery pits. "Sound off," Jim roared. "Here," I yelled. "Here," Miller choked out. We counted 4 voices. 2 of the rookies were gone. Just gone. Swept away into the dark. There was no time to mourn. The water was rising. "We can't make the main drift," Jim yelled. "It's the low point. It'll be filled to the roof in 5 minutes. We have to head for the old ventilation shaft in Section 4. It's higher ground." Section 4 was uphill. To get there, we had to cross a low dip in the tunnel. We linked arms. In the dark, touch is the only thing that keeps you sane. I felt Jim's massive hand clamp onto my shoulder. "Don't you let go, Silas. You hold on to me." We waded into the black current. The water was at our chests now. Every step was a battle. Debris was floating past us, timber, props, tools, lunch pails. We reached the dip. The water touched my chin. I had to tilt my head back to breathe. "Take a breath and pull through," Jim commanded. I took a gulp of air and went under. I dragged myself along the belt line, my lungs burning. The water swirled around me, turbulent and violent. I kicked and pulled, my hands scraping against the jagged coal walls. I burst up on the other side, gasping, coughing up black water. I scrambled up the slope of the floor. "Jim," I called out. "I'm here," he wheezed. He dragged Miller up behind him. We were in Section 4. The water was lapping at our boots, but it stopped rising. We were on a high spot, an air pocket, but we were trapped. The water had sealed off the exit behind us and the exit ahead of us. We sat there in the dark, soaking wet, shivering. The silence returned, broken only by the lapping of the black water against the rock. Hours passed, maybe days. Time doesn't exist when you can't see the sun. I started to hallucinate. I saw my mother cooking breakfast. I saw Sarah in her Sunday dress, saw the sun hitting the green leaves of the trees. "Don't sleep," Jim would nudge me. "You go to sleep, the hypothermia gets you. Tell me a story, Silas. Tell me about that girl." So, at 24 years old, huddled in the freezing dark, I told Big Jim about Sarah. I told him how I was going to propose. I told him about the house I wanted to build. "You'll build it," Jim said. His voice was getting weaker. "You're getting out of here. We're both getting out," I said. Jim didn't answer. Around the 20th hour, the air started to get bad. The water had pushed the bad air, the black damp, carbon dioxide, up into our pocket. My head started to throb. My limbs felt heavy. "Silas," Jim whispered. "You feel that?" "Feel what?" "A draft, a breeze." I focused. It was faint, but it was there. Cool, fresh air. "The ventilation shaft," Jim said. "It's behind that Brattis wall." He meant a temporary wall made of canvas and wood blocks. But the roof had collapsed partially in front of it. Now there was a small hole, barely big enough for a man. "You go," Jim said. "What, I can't fit, Silas?" Jim said. "Look at me. I'm too broad. And my leg. ... I think it's broke bad." I reached out and felt his leg. It was twisted at a wrong angle. He hadn't said a word about it the whole time. "Jim, I ain't leaving you. You listen to me, boy." Jim's voice cracked. "You crawl through that hole, you climb that ladder, you get help, you tell them where I am. If you stay, we both use up the air and we both die." "Go!" He shoved me toward the hole. I cried. I'm not ashamed to say it. I was 24, and I cried like a baby in the dark. I squeezed through that jagged opening, tearing my shirt, scraping the skin off my back. I found the shaft. I found the rusty iron ladder. I started to climb. 50 feet. 100 feet. My arms were shaking. My boots were slipping on the wet rungs. I could hear Jim singing down below. He was singing an old hymn. "Farther along, we'll know all about it." ... Single quotes. I climbed until I saw a star. The grate at the top. I pushed the grate open and rolled out onto the wet grass. The rain had stopped. The night air hit my face, and it was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted. I screamed. I screamed for the rescue team. "Down here. Section 4 shaft. Big Jim is down here. They got him out, but not alive." The bad air got him before the rescuers could get down there. They found him sitting against the wall, his helmet in his lap. I stood at his funeral 3 days later. It was a closed casket. I held Sarah's hand so tight I nearly broke her fingers. Never went back to the Black Dog mine. They sealed it up a month later. It's too dangerous, they said. But I kept mining. Why? Because it's what we do. It's what I knew. But I never worked a shift without checking the roof bolts twice. I never ignored a dripping ceiling again. I never ever let a partner work alone. So, you young bloods, want to know the lesson? Well, the lesson is that you are not promised tomorrow. You aren't promised the next breath. When you go into the dark, whether that's a mine or a war or just a hard time in your life, you hold on to the man next to you. You protect each other. Because when the water rises and the lights go out, all you have is the brotherhood. All you have is the person standing next to you. Now, go on. Get out of here. My coffee's cold and I'm tired. And if you see a gray rat running across the road on your way home, do yourself a favor.